Her new book, A Dream Deferred, Jesse Jackson and the Fight for Black Political Power, Abby Phillip examines Jackson's political legacy and explores how his presidential campaigns helped influence the political movements of today. So please welcome the lovely and talented journalist and author, Abby Phillip. I love your show.
Thank you.
So let me ask you this question. Congress just passed legislation that would force the DOJ to release the Epstein files. We just talked about that, and it's now waiting for Trump's signature. Now, Epstein's brother, his brother has raised concern about them scrubbing the files of Republican names. Did you know that? Are we any closer to seeing the real files, and what will be the ramifications of their release?
The first thing about this is that this is not a request by Congress. This is an actual law. Once Trump signs it, it is a law. So they have to comply. But I'm not sure how Epstein's brother, I don't know if he has inside information, but what I would say is that I do think that the Republicans and the Democrats, but particularly the Republicans who are pushing this on Capitol Hill, they are on the lookout for efforts to scrub the files, to delay the release. There is a time window in the bill of 30 days, but you know, Thomas Massie yesterday just said, we're gonna be watching very closely to see if this is being slow-walked, and then they plan to accelerate to another level, maybe going on the House floor and releasing what they know about who's in the files. And so I do think because this is so bipartisan, this was virtually unanimous in the Congress, I think they're gonna get a lot of pushback.
Why the Republican shift, do you think?
Because it is bad politics and it's bad morals to be seemingly defending a sexual predator. Period.
Right.
It's that simple. No one wants to go home to their constituents and say to them, I voted against holding people accountable for pedophilia or assaulting young girls. And so I think it's a crystal clear common sense issue. And even loyalty to Trump was not enough to stop this.
Well, Abby, we're seeing some fractures within the Republican, MAGA specifically right now, between the battle over the Epstein files, healthcare costs, and the elevation of Nick Fuentes. More Republicans like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Senator Ted Cruz are speaking up with their frustrations. What do you think this means for the future of the Republican Party?
Well, I'm so fascinated by this because this is the beginning, I think, of the battle for the next chapter of what MAGA is and who leads it. Because Donald Trump is not only termed out, but he's also older. He's not going to be there to hold MAGA together forever. And I actually, you know, talking to some conservatives, a lot of them are saying that Charlie Kirk actually was another person who helped hold the MAGA coalition together. And so now there's a fight for who is really going to set the agenda for MAGA. Part of the problem is that Trump never really had an ideology. Trump is about Trump. He has things that he wants and likes, may or may not be consistent. And other candidates realize that they do need some kind of consistency because from tariffs to the state of the economy to even whether they allow people like Nick Fuentes to have a voice in their party, some people in the conservative coalition in MAGA are realizing, yes, we do need to draw lines because there's probably not going to be this charismatic figure after Trump to hold the party together the same way that it has been for the last 10 years.
As the kids say, they don't got the riz.
Nailed it, Joy.
Yeah, I mean, whether you like him or not, Trump is this once-in-a-generation type of figure. The person who comes after him is not going to be that.
Right. And I do want to get to the book, but quickly, I would love your take on, we've seen this sort of about-face from Marjorie Taylor Greene. She's walked back some of her previous rhetoric. She's been opposing Donald Trump on the issue of Epstein and also Obamacare subsidies. What do you make of this turn from her?
You know, honestly, I feel like I should ask you that, Alyssa, because I feel like you know. Look, it's when I think Marjorie Taylor Greene, there's probably some truth to the idea that she had bigger aspirations, whether a Senate run or a gubernatorial run, and that those were not supported. But what happens when suddenly the person that you've been backing for the last 6, 7 years turns on you? I think it really changes your mindset about everything. It calls into question everything that you know about yourself. And I do think there is a lot to that. I don't think we should rule out that she said no to Senate right now. She said no to governor right now. I don't think we should rule that out for her because obviously life is long. There are 2 democratically held Senate seats in the state of Georgia. But I do think that this loyalty thing with Trump, if you've covered him as I have, you know it's a one-way street. But she literally is learning that
in real time.
right now. Yes, literally yesterday, she said, I've been so loyal to him, and they're calling me a traitor. I think she is realizing that Trump is not there for her. What is also fascinating to me is that—
Abby, enough about
Yeah,
Trump.
but-
Let's talk about this
yeah.
wonderful book before we
Thank you,
run out
Anna.
of time.
Thank you. I appreciate
Because
you.
this is
Yeah.
what you're here. And I'm very proud of you for having written this book. I know it was years in the making and so many sacrifices for you. And it's about Jesse Jackson. It cannot be more timely and important. And Jesse Jackson, Reverend Jackson, spent over 6 decades advocating for racial equality. But often forgotten are his 2 presidential runs. He ran for president in 1984 and 1988. And he was ahead of his time in many ways. We're seeing his message of economic populism in the campaigns of Bernie Sanders, of Zoran Mandani here in New York, even of Trump.
Even in Trump, yeah.
So what influence has Jackson had on politics today?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people remember Run, Jesse, Run. He was so present in that time. But these campaigns, I think at the time, they seemed like, well, he tried and it didn't go anywhere. But I think what we know now is that so much of what he ran on, specifically this idea of economic populism, of talking to the working class, talking to the factory workers, talking to union workers, talking to the poor, and also tying all of the different strains of America together, those are some of the very things that we're seeing showing up on both sides of the political aisle. We are seeing that message resonating with Americans today. And that's not even to talk about the way in which, I think without Jesse Jackson, you wouldn't have Barack Obama. You probably would not have had Joe Biden elected in 2020.
I think that's right. Let me ask you this, because you're right. Even though he didn't win, Jackson's campaigns reshaped the Democratic Party, in my view.
Very much so.
He registered millions of voters. He helped convince the Democratic Party to award delegates proportionally, which gave Black candidates in particular a fighting chance. He showed the party the power of the Black voter, really. Joe Biden, who Jackson beat in the '88 primary, benefited from that in 2020.
He very much did.
Definitely. So how can the party tap into that power in the midterms and in 2028? Because he was a real visionary.
Yeah. Well, let me say something about this proportional delegate thing.
Yeah.
That is not just about Black candidates. That is also about outsider candidates.
Yes.
And I think that one of the big messages of this book is that sometimes the electorate is craving for someone who will run against the establishment, who will take on the establishment on their behalf. And the political system in both parties had not really been set up that way until Jesse Jackson changed it for Democrats. And so in this moment, I think right now Americans are very discontent. They want people who are not going to just uphold the status quo, but it's going to break the mold for them. And that is, I think, one of the big lessons.
Wrap. It's a hard wrap today. Thank you for coming on the show. Our thanks to Abby Phillip. Her book, A Dream Deferred, Jesse Jackson and the Fight for Black Political Power, is available now. Scan the QR code on screen to buy it. And members of our audience are going home with a copy.